Cleaning up. Yeah, it's this next wall that looks like it's going to be the major crux. That looks kind of extreme.
Oh,
It's going to require some luck to make this work.
You know, most people who aren't rock climbers associate climbers with these kind of daredevilish, crazy people. But truth be told, I don't have a lot of stories of crazy things that have happened to me over the years. Like, most of them include me topping out boulders in unlikely conditions. And stuff like that. Like, that's usually the stories I'll tell people. I have this one thing that happened just when I'd started climbing rope outdoors, where, you know, like in Lord of the Rings, when Gothmog gets like a rock thrown towards him and it falls just next to his face, or like he just takes one step to the side to avoid it. That kind of happened to me, and that's probably the craziest thing that's happened in my climbing until recently. For those of you who have been watching the last few videos, you'll have seen me and Storer, the parkour group from the UK, and Alex Honnold kind of doing some silly adventures and yeah, just having a good time. Well, today I'm gonna tell you the story that isn't quite as much of a good time as those videos. And before we dive into my version of this, I just want to point out that Storer they posted a video from this day, which is quite immersive, and I'd highly recommend you go watch that first. Okay, we'll start from the top. We have Alex Honnold. When I was in Tokyo last year, I found a painting of him from the, I think, like 1600s. So he's probably immortal, and I don't need to present him a lot, I don't think, because most of you know that he's well known for his climbing abilities in sketchy terrain, is how I'll phrase it. Second off, the Storer group, well, we'll get into them in a few minutes, but they're essentially the same as Alex, except they do dynamic stuff on rooftops instead, which to me as a climber is even more sketchy than what Alex commonly does. And then there's me, who's a tiny pebble wrestler, kind of a nerd. Like, my most precious possession is a chessboard that's been signed by good chess players. It's like, I feel quite out of place with these people. Not because of their personalities, just because of what we do. They're all fantastic people, really, really friendly and really fun to hang around with. But just, yeah, I don't do a lot of sketchy stuff. Like, last year I posted a video of me on a deep water soloing comp, and it was the scariest, until this day, scariest like event for me in climbing that I've done so far. So yeah, I'm kind of a chicken. I'm okay with that, but you know, it does make me feel kind of out of place with these people. But before we jump into what actually happened this day, I kind of want to explain how we got there. So in short, I got in touch with Alex through a common friend of ours, Ryan Devlin, who runs the Struggle Climbing podcast, which I've been on a few times. And we just decided to potentially shoot some videos in Vegas together when I was there. And yeah, that was the original plan. And then when I actually got to LA on my way to Vegas, I got in contact with Toby, who's an old friend of mine from previous videos, previous events. And we started chatting like, oh, because he was in LA at the very same time. And it turns out they were hosting like a preview of their upcoming film that's actually directed by Michael Bay. And I got to see it with them. Like, they invited me to come watch it. Really, 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 really cool. Freakishly terrifying as well at the same time. We started chatting a little bit, and it turns out they were going to do this thing called a straight line mission, which basically means you pick a point A and a point B, and you try and walk from point A to point B without straying off to the right or left on the path. So like, you have to stay within 25 meters of each side, which, you know, that's kind of a cool thing. It's a bit of there's a lot of terrain where that just doesn't work. And they were planning to do it in the Grand Canyon of all places, which is like literally in every way imaginable, it should be impossible. And after a while, they decided that the Grand Canyon plan wasn't going to work out. So they were going to do a straight line mission in Red Rocks instead, where I was going to be. And you know, one thing led to another, and suddenly we have a collaboration with me, Alex, and Storer in motion. It's not a crazy mix-up, but it ends up being this weird dynamic because they suggested one of the lines to him, and he basically just said like, oh, you're all gonna die, because it was such a bad idea. A bit back and forth, and we decided on a different line that looked a lot straighter, you know? It looked a lot more achievable than the random vertical wall with chossy rock on it. So we end up getting, you know, gathering and going for this mission in the middle of nowhere in Red Rocks. And it's this thing where, you know, you have Alex, obviously one of the most accomplished climbers out there, and his skill and like technique and all that is so on point as it can be. And then you have a bunch of very athletic dudes who aren't climbers. And the thing is, we were going on a climbing mission without ropes, in a straight line. We get there and, you know, we were like, oh, but we'll just bail if we need to. And it ends up being this perfectly terrible, but also not terrible mission, because it's just at the level where, you know, it is a vertical wall, but for climbers, it would mostly be considered kind of a very difficult scramble. So most of the climbing on it is like kind of walk in on somewhat sketchy terrain, not great, but not terrible either. And we start, like, the second we get there, you know, because I've been climbing for a lot of years, and by this time I'm relatively okay at analyzing how people move. And you can tell that these guys aren't like, they haven't done a lot of climbing. It's pretty obvious, it's just not their terrain. They're very good at like chimney squeezing and also like, you know, working as a team, I would say. But it's just not their element, and that makes it like so that we're kind of at every pass thinking like, oh, should we continue? And Sasha, one of the guys, he notices pretty quickly that like, yeah, this is not great for me, and decides to bail. But it's also like the rest of us should maybe consider it as well, but we're also on this mission, and so far it's not particularly sketchy. The only sketchy thing is that some rocks are falling here and there, and we have to like remind each other to not climb in like behind each other, which is a lot easier said than done when you're like 7 people on the wall, because there's not a ton of space to move around. And we're also trying to make it to the top of it in not like 20 hours, so.
Like, don't step on little things or break them.
Yeah.
Like step on big things, like all these little things.
Yeah.
Like will break.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things will hold you, but you just don't really want to find out.
Yeah. We have to move relatively fast, but, you know, trying to keep the safety protocols as safe as possible. One thing to be careful of, I think, is just really not climbing on the loose rock at all. I feel like I might. Yeah, the day progresses, we keep on climbing, and it's like every part we make it through becomes slightly harder than the previous one. So nothing's like hard yet. If you put a rope and put a beginner on it, like every beginner you'll find will do it. But without a rope, it starts to get progressively more sketchy. And we get to this one section where I'm just like, okay guys, I just felt like, yeah, this might be pushing it a little bit too far, at least in the climbing sense. It's this crack climb. And Alex is just like, oh, you guys know how to so funny. She's like, oh, you guys know how to crack climb? Oh, right. No, of course you don't.
Do you guys, does anyone know how to crack climb? You just look like jamming.
Because crack climbing is a very advanced technique that, I mean, most, like let's say 99% of climbers don't even know how to crack climb, because it's something you only do when you crack climb, which is a very niche part of an already quite niche sport. It essentially means just jamming your hands and stuff into different crevices.
Oh yeah!
So, yeah, they don't know how to crack climb, not at all. And it's a very sketchy technique to apply if you don't know how to do it. But the good thing is that it's on like a slightly slabby inclining wall, so you can still get a lot of pressure from your feet. And it's not a crazy big fall if you fall. Like, you definitely do not want to fall, but you know, you'll survive. And they keep start scrambling up this thing, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I'm out with a bunch of lunatics, you know. But yeah, I mean, they're all having such a good time, which is really nice to see. And again, so far, if we needed to, we could always quite easily climb back down. But it's definitely starting to hit my nerves as, again, the pretty normal dude who's kind of sketched out by heights in general. So we keep climbing to this little ledge where we can stop before we sort of have to decide, like, are we gonna keep going or are we gonna bail? And we decide to at least keep going for this part, because it's just like this chimney looking thing. And this, my friends, is where it turns very, very sour. Because, as I mentioned earlier, rocks do fall down.
You can see it down. Back up there. Just get your foot on. Wait. Whoa! Yes! Yes!
And in this case, like a massive flake falls off and lands right on Benji's hand, or at least his finger. And his pinky is just completely severed. And I've seen a few climbing accidents in my life, but nothing that's like this terrifying and like serious, I would say. You know, like most of the injuries that occur are, you know, somebody smashing their knee or like kind of an ankle being slightly torn or broken, but I've never seen anything like this. It's literally just hanging on like a small strain, and I can't really begin to describe how much of like a hero moment he just, you know, gathers in himself, because it's so easy to panic. It's such an easy thing to be like, what do I do? How do I get down? Because he doesn't know what's ahead of him, because we haven't been there yet, and climbing back down without his finger is not an option.
Yeah, it's not looking good, bro.
Oh my god, that needs some attention.
Yeah.
So he just, I don't even know how, but he just like psychologically goes into this mental state and just is an absolute like boss with like making sure he gets the assistance he needs from Alex with taping it up, and sort of making sure that he you know, that it's not just like literally falling off. So he tapes it up, sort of puts it together as much as possible. It's such an intense moment because we do not know like what's happening next. We don't know exactly how to escape from this in the most safe way possible. But yeah, they managed to really gather like every inch of focus, and you know, decide like we're going up through this crack and we're going to try to find an escape either far out right or far out left. The end of this story is on Story Plus. Obviously it ended relatively well, considering the finger is kind of off, but the way, like I haven't even seen the footage myself of how they got down, because we got slightly separated at that time, but that was the most intense moment of my climbing career. And I'll say in hindsight, definitely not a great idea what we did, but it's a good lesson to everyone out there, like wear a helmet when climbing.
And that's why we wear a helmet. Did you see that? Woo! And, oh, I don't need a helmet, Gavin.
But yeah, rock breaking off is something that happens and something to be aware of, and we weren't this day. So, lesson learned. Seems like Benj will have a decent recovery, which is fantastic. And yeah, that's it for my crazy story. So I actually finished this video about 6 days ago, and I've just felt like something is sort of missing from it. And it's a bit of a discourse on, you know, the risks and what we could have done differently. So first off, I asked Toby what the Story Gang said, and he just said essentially, you know, wear a helmet, don't climb underneath each other, and bring a first aid kit, which pretty much summarizes the stuff we needed to do to minimize the risks. The thing with mountains, regardless of if you're experienced or if it's your first time, is that they're really deceptive and unpredictable. So I don't think there's anything a single person could have done differently. There's nobody to blame really. It's more just the entire situation that we didn't evaluate the risks properly on. And I think each of us individually would have to look within and say like, oh, this is actually what I should have done. So personally, I've been in similar terrain in the past. Granted, it's been with ropes and with more experienced climbers. And because of that, I should have kind of just been very serious and said like, hey guys, this is really, really stupid. We should back out, or we should do something differently. We should not be in a line. Like I saw Benj begin to climb beneath Josh, and it was like, I just figured nothing would happen, but of course it could. and it did. So we're all to blame, I would say. Like, there's no single person who did anything wrong, and that's, I think, the most fundamental lesson from all of this, is that, you know, if you see somebody doing something kind of stupid, you got to be ready to call it out. And I didn't this day, and that was my mistake.